any other BS on the internet. You can find me here on Twitter and GitHub. I work at a wonderful place called And Yet, and here's some of the wonderful people on the team. They build applications, they build software, real-time things, and they're just an amazing place that puts people first. I work at Lyft, where I'm a penetration tester. So for And Yet, Chief Security Officer, where we get to build software, and the Lyft side, where I am a penetration tester. That's David Diaz, if anyone knows him. Wow, that's really big. Where we get to do penetration testing, we get to break software, right? We get to point out the flaws in the things that you as developers build. We get the joy in sort of like pointing those things out. I'm gonna drink a lot of water. And I started this thing called the Node Security Project about 3 years ago, which I'll eventually get to at the end. And who here has done, I know a lot of developers, who's done node development? One person? Two? Three? Okay, like four? Okay. Okay, yeah, all right. Two hands up doesn't count twice, all right. That's great. I'm going to talk about Node at the end, and I'll explain a little bit more in depth for those who haven't done Node or maybe understand the ecosystem. This is if you came here to get a technical talk about security, you have been fooled because there's not much technical in this talk. It's basically me telling my story about how I got into the security community, into the security business, and some of the things that I've learned along the way that I would have loved to know earlier on in my career when I've looked back over my career. So I'm going to end up explaining the security community and the security industry to you a little bit, and as much as I can. And at the end, I've got some interesting things that should hopefully. What I want to do is inspire your inner hacker, because no matter what you go into, whether it's software development, business, whatever that might be, you're going to need some aspect of security, right? Like it's going to creep into everything that you do, whether it's a small percentage or a large percentage if you're focused solely on security. So this does pertain to each of you. Questions are okay. I do way better in a conversational setting. So if you have something to say that you think, like a comment or a question, please raise your hand and we can just discuss it. We should have plenty of time to do that. I'll probably end up going fast over a few things, and so my slides are very light. I didn't put up a bunch of resources and those type of things. Just write down those keywords. If you hear me mention something that's interesting, and just let curiosity be your guide on those things, as well as just like religion or politics. This is my perspective on this whole thing. So take it with a grain of salt. Take the good things that you like from it. Throw away the bullshit and keep what you want. So let's start with my story. How many of you are 21 or younger? Holy shit. None of you were born when my career in technology started. I may look young from that perspective, but my career started back when I was 15. And it wasn't just like a hobby thing. I was doing hobby computer stuff, basic development, when I was 8, because there was nothing to do in the middle of nowhere in the U.S. And we had a bulletin board system. Who here knows what a bulletin board system is? Just a few of you. Okay, so there's this thing called a bulletin board system where you actually dialed up with a modem with your telephone lines and connected over very low speed. And it was basically this really ghetto version of the internet way back when. It had access control. You had to have a username and password, and there was content that wasn't accessible by other users, and some that was. And so I found a way to access that other content. I basically guessed a password. I didn't guess it. It was in a file that I found that had bad permissions. And I was stupid. And that stupidity actually turns out to be the best thing that ever happened in my career. And if you hear me getting a little emotional, you'll know why later. And I may end up taking a minute because it does hit me pretty hard. So I ended up bragging about this in a town of 1,300 people. The news travels fast. Basically, the only kid who dinks around with computers doing something with this 2-line bulletin board system, and pretty soon the owner knew about it. And instead of basically getting me in trouble, he basically took me in under his wing, and he basically gave me a job making $4.75 an hour, which was minimum wage back then, U.S. And he took me under his wing, and some of the things that I learned getting that job was some of the skills was like PC repair, just basic customer service, things like that, and he also taught me some of the things to guide my curiosity, which was reverse engineering. The first thing I ever reverse engineered was like a nag screen on a piece of shareware. Does anybody know what shareware is? I'm feeling old all of a sudden. This is crazy. But anyway, we'll get to later on where we'll get to relevant stuff. But eventually, so at 15, I started doing this, building PCs and helping people fix software back in the DOS and the Windows 3.1 days, and like really old stuff. And then 2 years later, the internet was sort of like starting to sprout up and spring around, and the BBSs were going the way of the dinosaur. And we actually started the first ISP in middle of nowhere, northern Minnesota. We had 2 dial-up lines, and we had a 56K line that we shared with all of the. And so what I ended up learning. This is where the security comes in, because you start putting servers online, which other people can connect to, and you very quickly realize that somebody else is going to do something bad to them. And so my first step into security, whether it was a little bit of offensive stuff, a little bit of devious behavior, quickly took a back seat to being defensive, to learning how to actually have to configure firewalls, configure systems properly, keep systems patched, figure out where to find out when security updates have come out, things like that. And I did so under this person, Jim, who was my mentor, and guided me along through that beginning phase of my career. Now, what happened next? Basically, so that was the internet service provider that we started, Rural Access. I dug that up out of Internet Archive. It's like from 1998. They actually have that still archived. So from there, I graduated, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. But I ended up going to school for CS. Ended up absolutely hating it. I hated school beyond everything. I hated going to campus. I ended up going through 3 different schools, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, why I didn't like it. It turns out I just didn't learn that way, and I ended up just bailing on school after a couple of years. We'll get back to that. I ended up using when I moved to Fargo, North Dakota. I ended up going to work for the company that provided our bandwidth for the ISP that we first started, and which was interesting to me. It's something that I do now. It's like I meet wonderful people and I have relationships with them, and you kind of use those relationships to move along in life, to get guidance, to do things. And what I did there was I used my connection to get a job, right? Like I didn't think about it that way until I thought about it in hindsight. And pretty soon that job at Corporate Communications, I was hired to do support. So I'd started with PC support. I sort of became like an admin of this little ISP, and then I went back to doing support. And there's going to be a pattern here that you're going to see along the talk that and I promise I'll get to a point eventually. That ended up doing support, but then again, I gained foothold, I gained trust of the administrators, and I got more experience, and this time doing administration on Sun Solaris machines, a Unix variant, and as well as more telecom equipment and more gear. This time we had a DS3, which is a lot more bandwidth, 54 megabit, I think, or something. Megabit. Slow, like a typical internet connection we have now, was our main backbone. But again, we had more machines online. We had customer machines online. And so again, that defensive posture grew, and the seriousness of that there was more nodes online, there was more attacks, there was more eyes on security issues. And so again, we had more bandwidth. So we were getting used as, we get a machine owned, and then we were used as denial of service attacks way back then even. So through that, so that was kind of my experience there. That company got sold to ClearData, and then that company eventually turned into a Marion, and I ended up moving out to Washington State, where I used again that relationship with inside that company. They fired all so the company ClearData bought 14 ISPs, and they fired everybody at each one of those companies except for one administrator. So I managed to keep my job where I was at, mostly because they didn't pay me anything. And so they're like, oh, you know what you're doing, plus you don't make very much, so we'll keep you. I managed to basically say I'm done with where I had no ties in Fargo, and so I moved out to Washington. I ended up doing network administration over 14 ISPs. So again, taking that step hold, sort of up, right? Just sort of stepping up one little thing at a time. Again, that network of responsibility grew. More and more servers online, this time with Windows servers now, Linux servers, a mix of all kinds of different network topologies to consolidate. Well, turns out that that I learned an important lesson when I went to work for that last company, Marion, and that's I learned where I did not want to work and the type of people that I did not want to work for. And I got to learn that there was employers who would very much take advantage of ignorant people that didn't push back, that didn't have the backbone to just say no to working a 60 or 80-hour week and not getting paid overtime. And I basically flipped the table and said, F this. And I'd always I'd been doing defensive work, right? I've been dealing with all this infrastructure, and that curiosity itched at the back of my head for years and years and years. And I said, okay, I'm gonna scratch that itch, and I'm gonna try to get a job doing what I wanted to, which was offensive security. I wanted to do security research. I didn't really know how to get started in that, so I just started applying for jobs. Well, it turns out nobody wants to hire somebody without a degree. So I was kind of screwed because I sort of gave up on that school thing. And I got to this point where I had a 17-minute interview with Symantec in which somebody saw that I had a passion and that I knew that I'd put the effort in to learn what it is that I wanted to learn, learn the things that I knew. And they, basically 17 minutes, done, I had a job at Symantec. But it wasn't a job doing anything really prestigious. It was support. I went back to doing support at Symantec. Step, 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 thunk. Step, 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 thunk. Back down, basically at the bottom. And I started in firewall support at Symantec. And it was interesting because it again played to my defensive skills role. I could feel that. Now, basically, the thing there that when I look back is that, especially at this point in time, somebody took a chance on me and my skills based solely on an interview or some passion that they saw, and this is really important to me. In sort of just like looking back over my career, and something that I've tried to push forward is that is that giving those opportunities to somebody else. You're going to be in the position where you're going to want somebody to take that chance on you, and it's important not to abuse that. I never abused that. I always made sure that when I took that opportunity that I did so with respect, both for my mentor way back when, as well as the person at Symantec that gave me that chance. I worked my ass off for them because they gave me that opportunity, and I really didn't get paid much more than I was working at that other job, but it was slowly working its way there. But I was in it in a large security organization. I managed to get my way in, right? Hacker's gonna hack. You're gonna find a way, right? I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I was working like every angle I could to just make that forward progress. And so I, let's see. So there's an interesting story that I want to tell about that at Symantec that I've never publicly disclosed, that I've never talked about, like and this is interesting. It's very near and dear to me because it was my first major vulnerability that I found, right? Like I got sort of taught and mentored. We're just gonna leave that up there because this is great. I was on the Symantec Enterprise Firewall team in support, and I needed to find my ticket out of support. I needed to find that way out. And so we had a new product coming out called the Symantec Gateway Security, SGS, and it had a Java interface. And we basically were put into a week-long training class that they were training us on what we needed to know to support this product, which was insanely boring. And I spent zero time of the class listening to the instructor of this thing that was going to be my job, because I did not want to be doing this anymore. I wanted out of it. And so what I did was I spent the entire week basically using a tool called JAD, which basically still used for reverse engineering Java stuff, and I decompiled the whole interface. And I just had all the code, and there was a function in there called isAdmin. And you can imagine what isAdmin it does. Well, it was a permissions check. So it said isAdmin, and it would check a couple bits and say, like, if you were admin, it was a client-side app, so it would just show you the bits of the app that were for the client, for regular user or for admin user, and it had a bunch of roles. And I just changed it to return true. And I changed it, and I put it back together, and I compiled it. And I was like, there's no, like, why would they not check permissions server side? And put it back together, and I connected up, and all the little admin functionality lit up in the UI. And I was like, okay, there's no way in hell this is going to work. And I clicked on one of them, and the information appeared. I was like, okay, so now I can see things, I can read things as an admin, but can I change things? And sure enough, I went and changed a rule, and I added a user, and I could do stuff. And the sheer adrenaline rush that I had finding that first thing, that thing that no one else on the planet knew about, that power that I had to escalate privileges on firewalls that were used by large corporations, government entities, things like that. That I had this power, and it was so damn exciting, and that fueled basically the next N years of my career in trying to get out of firewall support. So what ended up happening is, through just sort of like working through support and working through that, it got me an interview with the consulting group, and I ended up moving to consulting, and ended up basically on the At Stake consulting team, the team that was At Stake, that was the Loft Heavy Industries crew, and doing penetration testing. So this was the first opportunity that I had to make the jump from the defensive side of the world to the offensive side, and I had no freaking clue what I was doing. Literally, I was making it up. I was learning it on the fly, uh, like hackers do, right? Like this. If you want to know the one skill that is sort of common to any hacker, other than curiosity and persistence, I guess I would say that it is one of being able to pick up any technology, dissect it, and figure out what it does very, very quickly. And that was basically what I was able to do. And I basically faked it enough and put in the hard work and the time. And it was like, oh, you have an 8-hour engagement or a 40-hour engagement to do. I was putting in 80 or 120 hours because I was covering up for the fact that I really didn't know. And that hard work ended up paying off, right? I got mentored by some amazing people. Pellis Yuli, who went on to Adobe, Katie Musirius, that went on to Microsoft and started their vulnerability disclosure program, and some people and again, taking advantage of those relationships that I had inside of Symantec to get mentored by people that could teach me those skills. Some of the engagements that we did was just basic network penetration testing, port scanning, connecting to services, that type of stuff, basic password guessing, as well as my initial web application stuff that I ended up doing. And I ended up really loving that, as well as social engineering. And so those are a couple areas in the offensive security side that exist. One thing I really found that I hated was the social engineering engagements, mostly because there was the human element about it, tore me up. I called a bank. We had an engagement with a bank one time, and I called the front desk, and I got the teller to give me her credentials to log on by just saying I was support. Very classic, silly ploy, but it works surprisingly well. And in the debrief meeting, she was there crying in front of me, thinking that she was going to lose her job, and that tore me up that it had that impact. She's not going to give her credentials out again. But it sort of hit me, and I really haven't done much of that from a professional stance since then. So moving on from Symantec, I'll just bask in the glory of that. Okay, the silliness. So I ended up quitting Symantec because I got to this interesting place in my career where I was overconfident. And I was like, I thought that I was like, hey, I'm a badass. I can hack this stuff. I can do social engineering engagements. I can do network pen tests. I can do web app pen tests. And again, I was overconfident in what I could deliver. And I thought that I could niche and do basically a better job and be my own boss and that whole world. So I started my own consulting called Ingenuity, and I was in way over my head when I first started, because the things I didn't realize was making that transition from technician to the business owner is freaking hard in terms of having to understand business and accounting and sales and wearing all those hats that you don't really want to when I just want to hack stuff, right? So it was an interesting transition in my career that ended up taking a lot of mental space, and I really a lot of my research stuff took a very a dive because of that, because of spending all that other time. And I ended up hiring people that filled that role. One interesting story that I want to tell, though, when I first started Ingenuity was the first client that we ever had. This is really interesting for those that were at the beginning. It was the ISP that I started way back when I was 19 and or 17, and the reason why they were our first client is because my mentor was passing away. He was diagnosed with cancer, and when they asked him who would be the best person, this wasn't security work, but I just want to share this as part of the story. When asked who could help that transition, he basically still had that faith, even though we hadn't really kept up communication. He had the faith that I could help them make that transition. So I helped them basically hire some other people to fill that role while he passed away, which was really quite a hard thing in my career. But so I ended up, like I said, I ended up filling my brain with other things other than like technical hacks. But one interesting thing that I learned from my social engineering days, and even though I said I really didn't want to do it again, I ended up having to do sales. And I'll tell you right now that there's nothing really different than sales and social engineering except for having to deliver something at the end, which I found really interesting. Is you're really using a lot of the same principles in both, but you have the integrity to deliver at the end. One thing that I found at this point in my career of running my own company was that I had to hire people to fill the technical aspects. And so one day this student shows up. Like, we had this little bar camp event, and this student shows up. His name was Daniel Barnes. And then he never went away. He just showed up, and I couldn't pay him. I really couldn't afford to pay him. But he was just there, and he wanted to learn. And I remembered from earlier in my career, from having that opportunity, from giving that mentorship from Jim. Why not give him that opportunity? It felt very right to do that. So it turns out that he was amazing. He was passionate. He picked up skills very, very quickly. And eventually I had to pay him, I had to hire him, and that type of thing. And it was a really, really gratifying experience to be able to take one of my situations and apply it to Ingenuity. If you do go out on your own with a business, read the E-Myth to kind of transition from that ignorant, from technician to business owner. If you don't want all that running around in your head, just don't bother to start a business. But okay. So that kind of brings me to the present. Right now, I'm basically the chief security officer at Andiet, as well as as I said, the team lead at Lyft. And the one thing that I want to talk about is how I said I found the place where I didn't want to work. I found now the place that I do want to work, and there's a few interesting things there that make it really special that I just wanted to call out again. Like, I tricked you into hearing career stuff and not security stuff. I'm sorry. The Angiet is a really interesting place because they put people first. A lot of businesses put that almighty dollar first, that euro. Like we want that money, and sure, we have to fulfill that in our goals. But I have the freedom to make and create as I see fit at Andiet. But I'm also held accountable by some amazing people. So if you see your friends effing about and that you think that they could be better, hold them accountable. Like explain to them what you think their potential is, and sort of pay that respect to them, again, in a respectful manner. So this is kind of just like that brings us sort of to now, and I kind of glossed over some stuff there. What's here? There. Oh, what the hell? I don't know. That just goes. Anyway, slides. So yeah, I don't know how to use computers. This kind of brings us to the present, and this is where we'll get into some fun stuff, which is I've been kind of looking at my computer, not at you. So if anyone's asking questions, just shout them out. Sorry. My current obsession is the node security project, that thing that I talked about earlier, and how I mentioned you can apply the security principles specifically in the art of hacking to basically anything. What I came to, in case you don't know, the Node community is this wonderful JavaScript community that sort of centers around Node, IOJS, and NPM. We publish modules and software, and it's sort of this wonderful community that's been extremely supportive of this effort of the Node Security Project. The Node Security Project was basically an experiment to see if we couldn't make security a core value of a programming community, because it's always been this dichotomy of developers or systems people and the elitists like security people who just want to point out flaws and make it your problem. So like I said, the hackers that were holding their hands up and all the developers, like the typical response would be, well, I found a vulnerability in what, the software you built, like give me credit, like make me famous, like feed my ego, and that's total bullshit. And we and I don't like that, and I wanted to change that about the community. So that's been kind of my experiment. There, I've done some. So NPM is that center where the community sort of sits around. We publish modules there. We publish these little snippets of code, and a lot of what we've done has been centered around securing those third-party modules, not actually the node core itself. So we've been doing auditing of those modules, and like getting people, just to change their damn passwords or not use simple passwords, or what happens when you publish a malicious package and things like that. So I'm not going to show that stuff, but that's just kind of like where I've been in terms of the Node Security project. Now, there's a site, nodesecurity.io, and if you're into Node and you're into security, you can find out more there. We've got a lot of stuff that we need help doing. It's basically me and David and the team at Lyft trying to make this kind of go. And there's been a few community supporters here and there, but we do need help. So if you're interested and you want the opportunity to sort of be involved in that, like come hang out and help. This is going to do that thing again and then switch for whatever reason. So I wanted to in all of that sort of like babble there, I have a number of lessons, lessons learned that I wanted to distill down and mention one more time before we get into a little bit of fun stuff. First of all, having a mentor had a huge impact in my life. I highly recommend that if you feel sort of directionless, you're not sure where you want to go, and I hate to sound like a career counselor or something here, but seek out that mentor, seek out that peer that is doing well, somebody at a company that you feel is successful. Be like the guy who just showed up at my company and never left. I don't know culturally what that's like here, but that works. That can work, right? Find a place where you can see if you want to be a part of whatever community that is, development or security or whatever. Use your relationship that you've built and return the favor. Like I said, don't abuse those. Use them to your advantage, but treat them with respect when you get those opportunities. And don't be afraid to start or restart at the bottom, like I did. Take the job that's not really it's not glamorous. Somebody's got to do it, and you're going to learn a lot. And that's what's interesting there is I'll get to it in a second. It's gratifying to give opportunities that you've received or that you may not have received. So when you get further along in your career, I hope that this somehow sticks in the back of your head, that you end up doing well, getting to a position where you can give back in those opportunities, and that somehow this just sticks there. Take responsibility for your mistakes and be respectful. I dropped a number of vulnerabilities once I got started doing research and doing security, finding vulnerabilities where I didn't tell the researcher, and I just sort of put it on the internet. And imagine how they feel when that happens, and you it's not a good feeling. It feels good initially, your ego is fed. You get that adrenaline rush, like I explained before, when you find that thing, when you latch onto that vulnerability that no one has, and you just drop it out there. You feel like a real asshole. it eats at you. And if it doesn't, maybe you should do something else. And an interesting thing that I always think about, a simple change in perspective can make all the difference. When you're talking about security, oftentimes, as like when you write your own code, and there's that missing semicolon, or that missing comma, or that variable that's misspelled, do you see it? Do you see it when you look at it and a friend can come over and say, oh, it's right there, after you spent hours looking at it and trying to debug and figure out why the hell it won't compile? It's changing your perspective. A good way to do that is doing like riddle type challenges. There's something that we did a couple days ago called the Lisbon escape game. We went and did that. It's an hour where you're locked in a room. Has anyone done that in here? Anyone else? Okay, a number of you. It's super fun. Like it's a good way of shifting perspective and understanding that you have to look at things in a different way to solve that problem. And that's what security is really, really all about. That's the core of what a hacker is in terms of looking at a problem. And that's the best way I can distill that down. So if you wanted to actually do, if you wanted to actually get into like offensive security, specifically like what I do today, other than watching movies like Hackers or Sneakers or War Games or something like that, here's a few things that I sort of thought about that would be good ideas. Other than just going and getting jobs doing those other things and getting access, or just getting a job in security. Get exposure to as much technology as you can, right? Like use your curiosity and even if you're interested in security, like get exposure to many operating systems. Don't just be like, oh, I like Linux, so that's all I'm going to do, or OS X or Windows. Like understand and know how to use those other OSs or languages. You might be like, I hate Java. Learn Java anyway. Like or like Python or C or assembler or like whatever it might be. Expose yourself to as many of those technologies as you possibly can. It's going to be to your advantage later in your career. It just will. Looking back, like the jobs that I was just taking because I was just offered it, or like I sort of just was doing this stepping stone thing, that played a huge role in me being able to just understand how these systems work when I'm just handed a black box. So get as many perspectives as you can. Talk to your peers. Talk to your friends. Hell, send me an email. You might get a one-line response. You're gonna get a response, right? You're gonna get some information that can hopefully change your perspective or get you to look at things differently, so that you can solve the challenge ahead. The biggest thing I can say is like back at Symantec, there's people in freaking support that were there when I was there back then that are probably still complaining that they're still in that job and they're not changing things for themselves. Hackers gonna hack. Change things for yourself. Make that happen. And get the help from the peers and the people in the industry that you can, and get that perspective. Expect to do more work than your classes assign. This is an interesting thing that I found out from which I glossed over. I ended up getting a Bachelor of Science when I was at Symantec, mostly because they paid for tuition. I was trying to get out of Symantec, and nobody else would hire because degrees. But the skills that you have when you get out of university, at least in the US CS programs or security programs, is not enough to jumpstart into I can't hire somebody to be a penetration tester with the skills they come out with from like a security degree in a university. They have defensive skills. Like I can teach that, but it takes time. So expect to learn a lot of those skills on your own, which you can do through things like watching videos on SecurityTube or Pen Tester Lab. This is where you should be writing things down because I didn't put them in the slides. Just, I don't know, use Google or something. Blanked. And read all of the things, right? Like everything that makes the freaking internet tick and how a system works, even closed source software, there's source there, there's assembler, you can disassemble it. There's RFCs that define all of these things that if you don't understand it, there's a resource out there that can help you understand it. You have to put that work in. Again, from the perspective of a hacker, no one's going to hand it to you. You find a clever way to gain that knowledge and to work around that problem. Don't know how something works? Read the paper. Or go to a talk or go to a conference, right? Which often offers student discounts to go, or just free if you just ask or show up to help. Like you can get that knowledge. I know there's security groups around Lisbon, Lisbon B-sides and things like that you can get, that you can go get, intermingle with that community here in person. In bug bounty programs. Now it's interesting, when I got started, I didn't get in trouble. I got a mentorship. You hack into something now, you're gonna get your ass handed to you. You're gonna get charged with a crime potentially. It's not a good scene for that. So there's legal ways around that because people give you systems to play with because they want you to play with them and report those bugs responsibly. So that's all I have to say about that. Any questions on any of that? Because otherwise we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna do some technical stuff. Actually, I lied again. No? Okay. So, first of all, yeah, let's hack SINFO. So we're gonna do a bit of live hacking. Who here worked on the software SINFO.org? What? Okay. No. Go back. Okay. When I said this, how did you feel?
Afraid, but most of all, I felt honored, I think.
Okay, but the first thing there's an interesting thing. There's this again, explain the dichotomy between builders and breakers, right? Like breakers, if you're in that position where you're breaking something and you're pointing out flaws in somebody else's software, you have to understand this took me years and freaking years to learn. Is that when you report a vulnerability, you get when you find that thing, like I got that adrenaline rush, you get that high. It's almost like a drug addiction. You get that high. The opposite reaction happens to the developer that built the software. They get anxious and they get the opposite low. So again, the world balances itself like that. Like you get this thing. The reason why I think most security people, other than to drive a vendor to fix something, they drop an ODA or they don't responsibly disclose, is because the disclosure of that vulnerability, and that's why they bug vendors to fix vulnerabilities too very quickly, is because they want that's the only way to get another hit for their addiction. It's the only way from that vulnerability that I found to get one more feed my ego one more time. I get a little bump when I get that disclosure and I get to tweet about it and brag about it. And it's true. Like you get that little ego boost. So with that said, let's do that. Now you guys are probably checking the logs right now, right? Did anybody in the room get any password reset things last night that were on staff? Did you?
No, it doesn't need it.
Oh, okay.
We got one.
Okay, good. I was playing around last night just for kind of fun and just to see how this might play out. But really, what I wanted to show you was what the way I would approach. This is gonna be nothing revolutionary. The way I would approach actually going after something, and we just decided to pick SINFO because why not? So the first thing, especially for web applications, because my obsession is very much application security. Networks I could give a damn about, but web applications are cool. So there's this thing, SINFO. So I go here, please work internet. Okay, and okay, but it doesn't really do much. So when you visit this URL right here, This is the Git repository that all of the source for how they deploy. Now, it's not really that big of a deal for SINFO because all of that code happens to be open source, right? Yeah. So this is not really that big of a deal. But let's say that it wasn't. If it was actually a site that was closed source, right? Distributed version control. So, do they teach Git? It's pretty common. SVN. Git? Okay. Yay. So distributed version control. All of the stuff to make the source go is in the Git meta directory, which is pretty cool. There's this objects folder that holds all of the actual content. Oh yeah, by the way, there's directory listing enabled, so you might want to change that. And please note, like they're going to take it with a grain of salt. I do not want to embarrass them. Anything that I point out, like please don't take it offensively.
As I say, we honor.
Okay, so you could actually just clone this down with curl or something. Can you read that? That's good. Okay. So there's this. I wrote a tool that you can actually revert those object files because of the. Okay, how to explain it? You can reverse engineer what those paths should be because of an index file. There's references in there, and you can just brute force them and try to download them. If you like, this is SINFO. So like, oh, that's ugly. This is what came down like just from the tool. Like there's some of it, but again, it's open source, right? So like we don't care. Here's something interesting. So I actually went. I didn't even know it was open. I just went through this whole exercise like this, and there's this, and there's this.
That doesn't actually work.
Yeah, I know. I was really disappointed. So this is what I went through. I found this and I was like, okay, cool. There's this upload one. There's this old one. And if you look at them, oh god, that's ugly. Yeah, it's because it's the freaking long path. There's like this the upload one has a lot more like the upload.php has a lot more like security checks in it than the other one. Like something happened that they like decided to put those security checks in there. But if you look at the upload-2014-0721, or maybe I've got it here. Yeah, there you go. So this one's got like, it's just like, yeah, cool, upload a file. It actually, if the upload directory was there, it would work.
Yeah, but the issue here is that this is kind of not used anymore.
No, I know. But still, if the upload directory was there, it would be uploading a PHP script using this particular version, and then you've basically got command access as the user on SINFO or changing content or whatever. So cat pictures. So there's that. That's kind of like that's the extent of it. It didn't work. It didn't pan out. Not everything does. But the point is that you start at one point. And you follow that rabbit hole down. You use the information that you have, and you look at you look in every nook and cranny to figure out what little stepping stone might I get to. So there was that, and then I was like, well, that sucks. And that was like 1 a.m. And I was like, all right, so maybe there's other stuff, right? Like there's other sites. And so what I did was I didn't really know of the other sites, and I brought up. Backtrack Linux, and I was like, let's just brute force all of the potential DNS names for like SINFO. I was like, what are the other hosts, right? So like, this is what it found. Like, it's just like it didn't find everything. I don't even know what some of those do. I didn't look at all of them, but I ended up finding one that was interesting. Deck. So this is great. This is making my day. Okay, I don't even know where's the menu. Oh, it's like responsive and stuff. So I found this thing and like I didn't know what it was, but at that point I did figure out that the source was open, and so I was like, okay, let's download the source. And at that point, again, you're using everything to your advantage. I'm like, I have the source, I have the site. Now it's an open source like code audit. It's not like black box. I don't have to guess what's going on. I can just like throw stuff at this. So I was like, okay, what happens like if I just I threw a space in there. It's like, oh, it sent a code. Like, so, okay, so at that point I was like, what are the potential usernames, right? And I tried to log in with Facebook just to see if like any user could just like YOLO log in, and like it didn't work. But then I was like, okay, well, it was like on I remember seeing on SINFO.org there's like a list of people, right? Like you're like, oh, there's like right like people like so I was like, okay, we'll just copy like it's like so it's like, okay, this is what I did. I was like, okay, so oh cool, so it sent him an email. Like when you go look at the code, it constructs a value and sends the code. And I'm like, oh, and then it gives you this nice little example code that's like, oh, it's 4 characters long. So at this point, like I've annoyed his email account, and so I'm kind of noisy at this point. If I was actually going to attack this, but I was like, okay, I want to know how this token's generated. I want to know what's actually going on there. Let me see if I can SINFO. Cool. Okay. So event. That's event deck, right? Yeah. Sublime piece of shit. So we get in here, and you end up finding the routes. I looked at what routes it sent to, and basically followed the message, followed it down. I think it's in member. Yeah, create login code. Cool. Create login code. Yeah, so like login code. A random token. Sorry, it's small. Uses rand token to generate a 4-character to uppercase, reducing entropy, value that is then shoved into a database for whichever member ID you pick, right? So what's interesting here is that when you verify, that's in auth. Verify code. I don't know how I remember this. When you verify, it just says the member ID that you provide in the URL, and then what I found interesting is it stores every freaking code that you generate. So it just stores them, right? And then it'll do a map. It does a map over them, and so the one thing that saved you is that you made it restricted to a 5-minute window. So basically, I have to but I maybe can get lucky if I just keep generating values and I keep guessing them. And Node is really, really fast, right? So it's really, really good at it. So what we do is we bring up burp, and yeah, I'm not actually going to do it live because it's 456,000, maybe like it's like 1.5 million requests to guess all of those across the scope, right? But we have a better chance of getting lucky if we've generated a ton of those, right? So it's actually not as hard, but it's gonna really annoy his email account. So you're gonna send him like 1.5 million emails or something, or whatever over, because you're gonna keep that sliding window is gonna happen, and maybe we're gonna hit one, right? So again, not demonstrating it, but again, security is all about demonstrating the weaknesses, right? That is a weakness in that particular function that can be updated and secured and whatever. So that's sort of the extent of that. Not as exciting as you might have thought, but that's how we do what we do. It's not like, hackers or war games, and like there's no spinning phone booths or like it's just looking at the data, looking at the inputs and outputs, and following the data. Like and The other thing that I can give you as a tip is that it's where data intersects systems. If you're really into this, really interested in finding vulnerability in your code, if you look where anything transitions from one system to another system, one function to another function, the intersection of those points and where data flows in and out is going to be where you're going to find vulnerability. That's just like straight up, you go audit your code with that pattern, you're going to find flaws. You're going to find bugs. It might not be exploitable really easily, but you're going to find ways to improve things. I think that's what I had. Okay. Oh, sad little robot. Okay. Play. So yeah, I didn't really hack stuff, but like kind of pointed out some stuff. Okay, so I still like it turned like from white to black hat. Okay, it's whatever. I got silly with slides late at night. Yeah, the future. The biggest thing, again, no matter what that I hope I've been able to share some insights as to security, career stuff related to security, like potential things that I've succeeded at and failed at, and I hope that that you give people the opportunities that you might have gotten. The reality is the future is that's you. You get to choose your adventure, not somebody else. Apply the hacker mindset to whatever you do, whether that's some social change or your own career, stuff like that. Remember, if you mess it up completely, you can always start over. It is something like a video game where you can just get a different job. Like it may sound fairly easy, but or fairly hard, but it's not when you put that hacker spirit into it. Don't be afraid to take the chance to change the world. Like, I really want to have a drastic impact on the Node community and make other future communities of programmers desire to have security as a core value built into them. I want that to be a thing going forward. I want to help, that sounds so cliche to be the change, whatever. I guess, yeah, hack all the things. That's pretty much it. Also, that's a weird picture. That's the end. If you have any questions. Okay, there's got to be questions. Somebody ask a question. Oh, okay. Queue up. Yeah. Pick. Fight for it. Okay. Go. Oh, you're right. Mike. See, picking a system and figuring out how it works very quickly. Yeah. Just go. There's another one.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned that when a security vulnerability is found, there's a big rush.
Yeah.
The person who finds it, and the big love on the developer. Do you have any ideas or suggestions or how to help the developer cope with that, or a suggestion for the developer itself for how to cope with that, with help for that?
Yes. So the way I've approached it is you can't help, but you can help it by providing as much information as possible when you report the vulnerability. Don't leave them with questions. Don't be like, I found a vulnerability in your stuff. Please get back to me. And don't provide everything. I take the approach of full disclosure, so I email with here's the problem, here's the impact, and here's my timeline for disclosure. Here's my expectation of you getting back to me, and I set that expectation up front so that they're not you're don't bother them every week, and then all of a sudden be like, well, O-Day. Like that's what you don't want. So set those expectations up front. The other thing that gets you off the hook for is basically extortion. You're not trying to extort them. You've given them all the details, so there can't be any question about your integrity from that perspective. So, does that answer? Yeah.
Thank you.
Next. Yeah. Go. Just pass it down the line. Yeah. Yeah. Go. Yeah.
I was just curious because you said last night or something you were looking into SINFO. How long did you take to find at least those little vulnerabilities? From here, it looked like
1 hour.
5 minutes. But
1 hour. 1 hour was took basically from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. was like okay, that one didn't pan out. But once I had that, it actually fell really fast. The majority of that was really trying to find some edge case to make it work. To looking at how that code flowed. So it was about an hour worth of effort.
That's 1 a.m.
Yeah, not uncommon, right? But yeah.
For a joke, yeah. But it's a passion. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
As a pen tester, what tools do you use most, or what tools do you advise for people who want to start pen testing?
So I showed most of them actually for what I use in my day-to-day job.
DVCS?
Yeah, let me mirror my display. So Kali Linux is a great distribution that has a lot of tools in it. It can make you feel like a total badass because you're like, I've got all these tools, I can just click stuff.
I tried using Kali, but it has so many tools for so many things that we get lost.
Yeah, so what I advise there is looking at something like pen tester labs, where you have a scenario where you need to use a particular tool, and so it shows you how to use that tool, or Security Tube, where it's going to show you how to use that tool. Just because you got Metasploit installed or something, which is another tool, doesn't mean that you're going to get access to something, right? Like, so apply the right tool to the job. You wouldn't hammer a nail in with a screwdriver. I mean, you might, but it wouldn't be as effective as a hammer. So use the appropriate tool for the job. So Kali is a great. I use it because it's got a bunch of stuff installed, and I don't have to clutter my machine with other stuff. It's already built in to the VM. The Burp Suite Pro. It's about $300-400. It is like, I realize that seems like a lot, but from what its capabilities are, it's amazing. Because like we can just like start attack. Like it'll just keep going. We'll stop. Okay. But it's got so many capabilities that we need. We can intercept browser traffic, so we can see exactly what's happening with HTTP messages. Yeah, I don't have to tell you about the features. I'm not a car salesman. And then a web browser. Like for web application testing, this is my tool. I need to know how that app works, and this is where I start. I need to know what it's going to do, and then Burp's going to tell me these are what the requests look like, and then I can look at the nuances for like stimulus response. What happens when I send that? This is the core tools. I have to say it, like a browser and Burp like makes me pretty effective. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. And you down there?
Okay. So I have two questions. So the first one is if you just want to learn and you don't want to get into trouble, which is kind of borderline here. So what do you suggest someone to do? And the second question is, will you by any chance be around starting Friday 10 p.m. because we'll participate in a CTF and we'll very welcome your help.
Is there a CTF?
Okay.
Really? Okay, that might be fun actually. I'm here to.
Yes, if you're around, it's 43 hours starting Friday 10 p.m.
Okay.
Everyone interested? Please join.
So, starters, where do you get your start? Bug bounty programs are the best place. They're like GitHub has one. Bug Crowd's great to participate in. Some of those crowdsource things. Build VMs, like you down a virtual box and build a Linux box. There's labs out there to say install this vulnerable service. Damn vulnerable Linux is a great distribution that's got a bunch of vulnerable services in it that you can attack and learn. And it's got some walkthroughs, Pentester Labs, like I mentioned, Security Tube. That's what comes to mind. The other, OWASP has great explanations of vulnerabilities, OWASP.org. They also have something called WebGoat. There's NodeGoat too that has like, it's a vulnerable web application, so you can see like vulnerabilities and exploit them. That's what comes to mind. It's really, really hard. The other thing is learn all of the other things. Learn as much as you can about all the other protocols that make the internet go. HTTP, big one. HTTP2's coming out. Just gonna need to know how networking works. Know how it works up and down the stack, so that you don't have to spend time learning that stuff when you really just want to dig into a system. That's why I just so quickly apply that knowledge. Like in the middle of the night, was like, I already know how HTTP works, right? It's a given. So as for the CTF, maybe, because yeah, so that might be fun. But is it open for anybody to participate?
Yeah, so we have a group. So basically, it's the Boston Key Party. It will be organized by some guys in Boston.
Okay, so it's a remote thing.
Yeah. So it's a Jeopardy one.
Okay, so is your team open for other people to contribute to? Sure. I'm just inviting everyone else so that if I can't make it, because I think I'm going to Porto, right? Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Any other questions? I don't know how much time we have, but there's a couple other questions. Just throw it at them.
Hi.
Hey.
Last year we were actually doing something about SQL injection.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, where is the limit between extortion crime and what you consider information? Because there was a colleague of us that showed the concept of SQL injection by penetrating university sites.
Yeah.
And he emailed them about the eventual problems and the eventual solutions. But I'm curious to know the limits and if you have ever been sued for some of these things.
So, disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. This does not constitute legal advice. Second of all, if you do find yourself wanting to do some research, the EFF, Electronic Freedom Foundation, will gladly talk to you about it before you do the research and talk to you about what the gray areas might be and what your legal risk might be. So I found out about that after I did some research. I've never been sued, but I've never been sued mostly because I've followed the rule of the few times that I did drop a few, I was kind of like that angry teenager and just drop some O-days, like nothing really very serious, but it was embarrassing for the company. They didn't come back. In the U.S., the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act basically has to show, I think it's the $5,000, at least at the time, it was they have to show $5,000 worth of damage done by said thing. So that's really easy when you just go hire a really expensive consultant. But it was just embarrassing. That wasn't abused. So I've never been sued there. But the line there is where you want money or I hear of people clients are somebody just emailed us and said they want swag for in exchange for this vulnerability. That's swag extortion, right? It's you need a shirt that bad? I'll give you a shirt. Just do full disclosure. Hand over all the details. And sometimes there's no harm in just emailing and saying hey, I'm a student, I want to do this, or if you do find it, just give them all the details. Chances are they're going to be, but it is a risk. It's a gray area. There's a lot more laws coming into play that is going to be, at least in the U.S., where it's limiting that a lot more for us. So, I think there's one more, if we can do that one. I'll pass it up. Hot mic.
Hi, I'm just curious, what are some of your best achievements in bug bounty programs?
So, the only bounty that I've ever been paid out for was PayPal. I one bounty there. A lot of I spend most of my time actually doing hacking for money, where professionally ends up paying more from the time perspective. Usually bounties exist on software that is very mature and that they need a lot of eyes, and so the amount of income made to a bounty is quite low. Some people spend months like looking for like browser bugs and things like that. So I think I got $500, but it was for a similar vulnerability that I pointed out in this actually. So which is I think all I can say. But most of the stuff. The other thing too is from a professional perspective. If I want to like we've gained notoriety already. We've gained that foothold, so people know who we are and hire us for those services. And so a lot of that stuff I can't talk about like legally, like there's like NDA like with clients. So I can't talk about which clients those are. For like your perspective or like somebody else's, you would want to publish those things to sort of create a name, right? Like you want to find those things, and it's one way of creating a name is through those. So getting experience, right, where there are none. But anyway, babbling. And any I don't know. The other one, yeah. Okay. Run. Last one. Okay. I can talk about this stuff for days.
Related to what the guy said about a friend of ours who hacks some legal whatever. He found many databases with plain text passwords and all the information, and it was just ridiculous to watch. And all of the things he found, he reported them. Mm-hmm. And most of the people answered, "Oh well, no one has the same knowledge as you. We don't care." Why do you think that happens? I mean, why don't people nowadays invest more in security?
Ignorance. I mean, there's a fine line between ignorance and stupidity, right? But I hear that we hear that a lot, right? Like we report a vulnerability. Oh, that's a feature. No, it's not a feature. It's and that's why some people take the risk of saying like this is a serious vulnerability. Sometimes it's the lack of the disclosure, the friend explaining it so that they understand what the impact is. I've seen that where it's like it's not explained effectively enough. And then I've also seen where the company just doesn't care. And so what happens then is, well, this again, if you explain this is my timeline for disclosure, it's going to be public eventually. And sometimes there's legal things that might get put in place that's going to block that. Sometimes what? Oh, sometimes sometimes they might hire you to get you to sign an NDA so you won't disclose it. That happens too. I don't know why they do it, right? Like it's a mystery of our industry, right? Like it's like all the software that you write as developers, by the way, you will have bugs, you will have a security flaw in it at some point. It's a part of the process, right? Like security is not a destination; it's a process, and so like they're just they're at a very immature stage of that, and somebody with the knowledge will end up owning them, and they'll get their karma. It will happen. So anyway, that's it. Okay.